Hello. Hopefully everything works. So let me first again add the link to the announcement post. If you want to see the photos of this sample project. There's also a list of supplies I'm using, which is also a description box. And I actually forgot about two things there, and those are masking tape and like a old book page. So those two are missing from the list. I'll add them a little bit later on there, but at the moment they're missing. I noticed it a couple of hours ago, but I didn't want to change the materials list on such a short notice. Better to be open about it. So, hi and welcome. Hopefully everything is like you can see and hear me okay. And this is something I'm then recreating in this live. So an art journal spread with some stenciling, stamping, and watercolors. There's a couple of ways I use same stencil, and also a couple of ways I use watercolors in this spread. Hopefully giving you ideas how to stretch your materials in a way. Just probably they are something you already know, but hey, maybe you need a reminder or maybe they are new. I don't know. Let's wait a couple of more minutes and then let's get going. If you have any questions now or later, just let me know. And if you are seeing or hearing me okay, please let me know that as well. Or if you don't hear me at all, that would be great to know as well. A quick sip of tea, because there's still a little bit of time. I'm not sure, well, that I can show, because that was done during another live. The recording is here on the channel. And then there's, well, this one is then already published with a process video, but there's still, well, and this one, but there's still a couple that are not yet published inside the journal. I'm actually doing the 2 pages during the live and adding them to the journal then after the live, like, but it's just double-sided tape and adhering them here. And that's partly because even though this journal is almost, I just started it, you can see what's already happening. So it's spiral bound, but that's not a huge spiral. So as I'm doing these dimensional pages, I'll run out of space quite fast. But almost time to go. And welcome. Good evening, day, night, morning, depending where you are. Okay, enough about just blah-blahing. Let's get started. If you have any comments or questions, just let me know during, right? Let me move this aside. Where should I put it? Maybe there. So I can grab it when I need. I have 2 sheets of paper. The other one I'm going to stash for now because that's for the embellishment, and this is going to be the background. I often use a separate piece of paper in my art journals and hardly ever go straight on the journal. I'm not sure why, it's just something I've done. Maybe in the beginning I was afraid to ruin the page, and thus I used another piece of paper, also because I used to use a lot more pattern paper So that's a separate piece of paper. But nowadays I tend to use just white cardstock and start from there. If you have followed my lives beforehand, then you know that this is Fabriano 160-gram cardstock. That's my go-to. First, I'm creating a pattern to the background, and this is something that was actually in a recent process video as well, but a little bit differently because then I had painted the paper beforehand, and now I'm using just plain paper and frottage, so rubbing. So there's the stencil underneath. This is A.B.Studio stencil, and then a wax crayon. And I'm just It seems that the video is a little bit lacking, which is good in a way because then you don't see the wobble. Because I need to use some force to get the pattern showing, so the camera seems a little bit wobbly at the moment. I'm using kind of T-tones in this layout again, but of course you can use techniques with any colors. So if you don't like the brown tones I'm using, then just use another color scheme altogether. I'm mixing a couple of different colors, just starting with one color and then continuing with another. With this page, I'm going just with these diagonal strokes, as you can see. But in the process video, I actually alternated the orientation, so going from top to bottom and from left to right, alternating those strokes, so then it's more like a solid color or a solid pattern that way. But this time I'm just going with the diagonal. Now if you want the pattern to continue seamlessly, then you of course need to pay a little bit more attention to where you put the stencil. But as I know that there's going to be layers coming on top, I'm not minding that at the moment. I'm just adding these lace kind of florals across the page. So even though there's like the kind of a half a flower there, but it's also kind of in the middle of the page. So probably that ends up being in the seam anyway, so not that big of a deal. Like that. Let's add a little bit more dark brown in some places. Huh. Why did I do that? There's no stencil underneath. But let's use that. And then that one there. And these I can now move aside. And then something on top, because in the finished page you don't see this pattern that well. Of course, it depends on the color scheme you're choosing. If you go with opposite colors, or if you go, let's say, you can use a crayon resist as well, like this, although there's just teeny tiny pieces of the cardstock actually absorbing color, especially with this kind of stencil. But still, you could use this as a resist and then add some color on top, which reveals the pattern. I'm following the T-tones in this colors as well, so that kind of then hides the pattern, if that makes any sense, because I'm not using contrasting colors. It's just adding more of those sorry, T-tones in there. I'm mixing different browns just to get this kind of a melange, is that a word? Kind of like a watercolor effect going. And going over the whole page with a flat brush and quite a bit of water, so I get this misty kind of thing. When there's more contrast, like these dark brown bits, you can see the pattern more, but where I actually added kind of T-tones on top of T-tones, then the pattern is just subtle. But like I said, of course you can use different color schemes and different contrast, so that may or highlight or hinder the pattern. In the ready version, there's not that much of that pattern actually showing here, but it's a great way to break a blank page, for example, to get you going, and it may then result into something else. Of course, depending on the composition, you could use a bigger space and leave that showing. Let's move this aside and let that dry for a while. I find it best to let watercolors air dry if possible, because that affects to the look. If you dry watercolors, they end up being these kind of like rings or something. The color pools, and then you dry it, and then there's this really concentrating color in the middle. Whereas if you let them air dry, I think the look, at least in my opinion, it's nicer looking. And then let's use the watercolors and create some embellishments. Maybe I'll actually start with these, because I need 2 flowers, 1 pumpkin, and 2 leaves, at least, if I'm following the same composition I have in my sample project. So this is a Stamper Anonymous stamp, and instead of ink, I'm using watercolors to stamp. It's not a new idea, and you can use the similar, get the similar effect by using crayons, for example, like water-soluble crayons, and get that look, because then you add the crayon on top of the stamp, add some water, and then stamp, and then you get this lovely watercolor look. But if you don't have those crayons, but you have watercolors, then try it. As you can see, I'm just painting the colors in, and depending how much water you use, the image is going to be sharper or then more like color blobs. And it's always kind of a surprise. Let's see. Yeah, this was a blob version. Let's add a little bit less water this time, I say, and then use a lot of water. It seems that painting needs concentration, as I'm now totally silent. Maybe I need a brown there as well. Okay, another version. I'm probably ending up using that one as well, but let's see if this one is better. Still a blob. And I promise you I did those sample flowers the same way. Just with less water. Now this one looks better, as it's not a pool of color anymore. Yeah, now there's actually some texture showing and not just a blob of color, even though this is really delicate. I think that you can definitely use that one as well. But if you're looking for a more detailed impression, then just add the watercolors quite dry. Then pumpkin. I'm mixing colors on top of the stamp. As you can see, I'm picking up some orange and then some red and just letting them mix on top. Can't remember if I used the leaves. No, I didn't, but well, already painted those. So let's stamp them. This is probably going to be a blob because there's a lot of water again. Some definition. I guess you can tell that's a pumpkin. So let's see if I do one more flower. But first I do a couple of leaves because I'm running out of space with my paper here. So let's do that first. I think it was this leaf I used. Good, it fits and doesn't get on top of that stamped image. So another way to use stencil and watercolors. Again, nothing new here. You've probably seen this done before, but it's always fun to have a reminder. So just watercolors and a stencil. Sorry. If you want, again, more definition, the same applies as with the stamping. Then just use less water, quite dry. But I frankly love the kind of pools of color you get, and not that sharp of a impression. Because, well, I'm doing this. Sorry, I can't speak with my brush on my mouth. So I'm doing this with watercolors because I want a watercolor effect. If I would like to have a sharper image, then of course I could use another medium. But again, just maybe get your ideas, start exploring the materials you have at home, like what else I can do with this one medium than just, let's say, paint. Or okay, that's really then autumn leaf with all the orange and brown added. Let's add a little bit more of this green here so it's not that autumny. Oops, not that autumny, she says, and then adds a lot of orange. Well, here we go. I think those are usable, so I can then do one more there. I have a bucket of water underneath the table, so if you're wondering where I'm kind of going, I'm just dipping the stencil to the bucket of water to clean it a little bit because I'm needing it in a later stage. So otherwise I would just leave it in the bucket. But this time I needed to clean it. So I have 3 flowers, but I would like a little bit more definition to the other one. So let's give it another go. I have the 2 leaves I need and then 1 pumpkin. So it's going okay. And this time just remember, practice what you preach. So less water. Then the leaves. This stamp has the kind of texture here, and I'm just covering a little bit more than I need, so I can then cut the image loose in a later stage. But I picked this stamp because of the two designs in one, so to say. So you can just use the flower on its own and then the script, which I'm doing during the live. Now I have two more detailed flowers, so those are good. Then I can move this aside. And then actually one more to a tag that's going to be in the back. If I'm being completely honest, I actually used the residue in the sample layout to make this one. But let's do another one. It's a little bit more subtle than the other ones, so I'm trying to get less color in here, so it's not that overpowering, but just a little bit visual texture then to the background. Now I have done the leaves and the flowers and the pumpkin and the tag. So let's get back to the background, which is dry-ish. It's a little bit like moist to the touch still. I'll be needing those a little bit later, but not right now. Then we need this stencil, some paint, and a sponge. So there's the background pattern there, and then I'm adding the same pattern to the foreground with another medium, and that's acrylic paint. Maybe I'll do it here, or otherwise I'll just get the sponge filled with the paint, and then there's no pattern. I find it fun, or I'm not sure how I would describe it, but kind of continuing the same pattern in multiple layers. Like here, there's the background one, and then there's another layer of the same pattern coming on top. Just going here and there. And this is actually a pattern that's more visible in the end result than the previous one, at least in the sample. Not sure how this one goes, so we'll have to see. I'm guessing that's okay. And into the bucket we go. Because if my memory serves me correctly, I'm not using that stencil anymore during this make. Then I'm adding the same color, a little bit broader, let's say, kind of these blocks of solid color. This one is quite opaque, PaperArtsy paint, but still you can see the really dark colors coming through, and that's really nice. You can see the layers a little bit. This is still sorry, an A4 sized paper, and in a little bit later stage I'll then trim it to fit inside my journal, but I like to start with a bigger sheet, kind of create a master board and then go on from there. Then we'll have some stamping, and now I need the stamp, which I actually put in the bucket. Silly me. Just need to dry it because otherwise it's not going to work that well. The acrylic is a little bit wet, but let's see if it goes still okay. So that's just Archival ink. I think, yeah, potting soil. Kind of following the same T-tone color scheme here. Usually I use black, but this time I was a little bit hesitant to use such a strong contrast, and instead went with a brown. Just listen to your intuition if you're repeating this. If you want a stronger contrast, depending what kind of colors you are using, you might need to use black, or then something matchy. And that's also something I usually do. I use these color palettes that colors are near to each other. There's a fancy name, and I know the name, but I can't say it, so analogous, maybe. Sorry, my English is not that good. A couple of stamps there as well. Just a little bit of visual texture. Then we need those. The embellishments are a little bit wet still, so let's work with the ones are quite dry. This is just an ordinary pencil, and maybe I'll show you from this one. What I've used it for, I'm adding some layers to the background, but also I'm kind of tracing the patterns, especially if the flower is more of a blob, like you can then use the pencil to kind of get those details in. And it's, again, more of your own style because you're using your hand to draw, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You have this kind of an outline already here. Just add some details and fill it in. So let's do a kind of a leafy branch. What if this is just a leaf, not a branch? Like that. And then here I went just with a focal point is going here, kind of thing. And then there it is. Another way to use a stencil. Of course, I could go here with just freehand, but if you need something to guide you, because in here you have the blobs of color to guide you, you can use the stencil to make kind of the first go. As you could see there, I actually went over each petal a couple of times. They are not petals, leaf, parts of leaf. What are they? So now I have this kind of a guide here, which I can then follow with my own style and give it a little bit more maybe character, because it's not that drawn looking anymore. Just tracing the same shape and giving it a little bit look or oomph that way. So those are done. let's move then those aside and check the embellishment versions. Those look good. There's still a couple of pools there. So I'll just do this now. If you have more time, then just let them air dry, because honestly, in my opinion, they look better if you don't interrupt what the color is doing. And there's this part, and then kind of segments of the pumpkin. Like that, and then just a couple of lines. And then let's do one of these flowers as well, because that's a more of a blob flower, but still usable. I'm quite loose, let's say, in my drawing. So I'm not sure if that is. Now it's not concentrating or focusing, but there's now a little bit more detail in the flower than just a blob. Of course, you could then, I make this kind of a ranunculus, I have no idea, but more like a petals. But if it's this kind of a shape, you can turn it into a thistle as well. So that's another maybe idea. If you need a thistle and you don't have one, then just over ink a flower and turn that into a thistle. But I'm like more following the shape of the actual stem, which is this kind of a peony type of flower. And then I might actually use the blob flower instead of the more detailed one. And then the same loose lines here as well. It doesn't matter if I go a little bit over or a little bit under. It's just how you feel. I'm using a regular pencil here because I really like the look of the gray line. It's not as harsh as black, but still enough like contrast to get noticed. But again, depending on your color scheme, you might need to use a stronger color or even white to highlight. Okie dokie. Then I'm thinking it's cutting time in many ways. And this time I didn't prepare anything. So unfortunately it's a little bit or quite a bit of cutting, because I wanted to give you a possibility to kind of create alongside me. And if I now would just pull a couple of ready embellishments, then that wouldn't be that fair. So now's the perfect time if you want to ask me anything, because I'm now cutting and then doing some more cutting. Probably sounding like a parrot, but I'm just saying it again that if you use scissors to fussy cut, then the shape is doing all the moving and the scissors stay put, because it's then easier to cut. I'm not liking actually that detail, so let's leave that off. And the sample ones, I've colored the leaves with green and they look better, so we just do that. That's also a little bit handy if it's kind of this a little bit more hazy looking flower than a really detailed one, because then you can alter it a little bit with more ease, because then it doesn't matter if the line seems to be broken, because the lines are broken anyways. Here we go. Just a couple of more. I'm not sure if the camera is picking this up, but I actually like this blob of flower better than the detailed one, at least at this stage. It has a little bit more character, or maybe it's the way that it shows more of me in a way, because I needed to do those details. Whoops. Always a good sound when you're doing something. Whoops. So 2 flowers, then 1 pumpkin coming up. Luckily this is a lot easier to cut. Like so. And then 2 leaves. Quite a stronger color than the sample project, so let's see how they work. Or do I need to do some additional steps in this make? Well, for the lives I usually, there's just a couple of times when I haven't made a sample, because that's also clearing my mind in a way, because I usually let the project lead me, and then it's, well, of course I have my go-to supplies, but it's hard to make a materials list if I'm just going with the flow and not knowing what I'm doing or with what I'm doing it. So that's why I usually end up doing a sample project first, so I have some idea of the materials. But please let me know if you rather have something more free than live with a materials list and a sample project. If you would prefer something to be just made from scratch during the live, because I have these lives each month, so I'm willing to try different things. And if you don't want to comment here, let's say, you can also reach to me in any social media I'm on to leave me a note that hi, that would be what I would like to see, because I'm doing these for you. So you have the possibility to see something in real time and also ask questions, because I do make those process videos as well, so there you can see me work. But this is then a way to communicate if you want. Almost done, just a couple of leaves. If you're creating alongside with me, then don't worry. or hurry, because I'm probably ending up babbling again. So you can then catch up. Or maybe you're already done. Maybe you're faster than me. So let's move those embellishments there. And then more cutting. But luckily this should be a lot faster because it's with the paper trimmer. Maybe like a 1 centimeter here, and then, well, actually there's less color there, so quite okay. And then this one should be 19.5, but let's see if I can make it or if I need to make it a little bit shorter. Let's go with that. So there's not that much white showing, and this side it's then a lot more trimming. 24. There's 24. And then 12. Like that. When I'm doing the trimming, as you can see, I'm doing a spread, and I already cut the 2 pages because that's something I've used to doing. So now I know where the gap is going to be, and I can make the compositions a little bit accordingly. So for example, I don't put his foot like this because then it looks really weird, being like a severed foot. I'm trying to continue the composition from page to page, but just not with any cause. There needs to be some kind of order in that. If you joined in a little bit later, I said in the beginning that unfortunately I forgot about 2 products in the materials list, and those are masking tape and an old book page. Whoopsie daisy. No. So even as it seems a little bit silly, first cutting the 2 pages apart and then adhering them together again, that's exactly what I'm doing. Depending on the composition, I might use a bit of washi tape underneath as well. But mostly I'm going with the horizontals, so just going over the seam and not securing this bit anyway, but they are just staying a little bit better put that way. Oh, Lena has missed the beginning, but yeah, there's the recording. Depending where you started watching, it might be the frottage, so just rubbing, really fancy name for rubbing with a crayon, and then watercolors on top, some stenciling with acrylic paint, and stamping and pencil doodles. So just really adding some layers here. Then book page. Let's do a book page, and that one we need here as well. Well, let's see if those would work. In the end, you can't really see them that much anyway, because I'm building layers and adding stuff on top. Maybe I'll add, yeah, this one will be there. Where's my, there, double-sided tape. But yeah, I can understand it's nice to be on vacation and exploring different places, but well, of course, you can have your go-to art kit with you. But whenever I'm traveling, especially with my family, I'm not bringing anything with me because I'm then usually just trying to experience the place where I am. And it's not that I'm there for many, many days. So that's a little bit different maybe if you're going for 3 weeks or 2 weeks someplace. So it's good to be home again. Yep, that's upside down, and I put it on purpose because I'm more like trying to build a visual texture than something readable. So just adding some stuff there. And this piece, this one is going to be his little perch because he's sitting on top of something, so I don't want him to float just here, but to have some kind of a grounding element for him. So let's see about the height. Oh, and what a lovely text I've managed to rip, because there's something about dying here in Finnish. Maybe we can then try to hide it with some embellishment or something, or maybe we put his bum on top. Yeah, let's do that. About there. If there wouldn't be any like words I want to hide, then it wouldn't be this particular, but now I really don't want that to be visible there. Then some foam tape to mount him in place. And foam tape especially because I'm adding layers underneath even though he's in place. That's how I did it in the sample version as well. Of course, if you plan ahead, you could now add some vintage lace underneath also, but it's then, I'm doing this exactly the same way I did the other one, so it's then tucking that lace underneath. So that one is going to be there. This one is going to be here, and this one is here. Let me show you the sample version again for a second. So it's looking like this. I'm following the same composition. Of course, I could do something totally different, but going with the same here. These I'm attaching with a stapler. Why? Because I want them to be a little bit fluffy, if that's a correct term, with leaves. I don't want them to be too stuck all the way to the page, but rather to be a little bit airy looking. And then to the other end where I'm not reaching with the stapler anymore, just a couple of drops of glue. Not, again, securing them really tightly. Then where is the flower? Here it is. Will I make him for this one or this one? Actually, I like the delicate one, even though the other one has more contrast. So maybe it's because of the background and I like this one better. I'm not sure if I should. It would have made more sense if I had made this one earlier, but let's see how this goes. If I can try to cut his hand loose from his knee. So I can then do this. I'm not sure if that's really awkward looking now. Well, let's go with that anyway. A piece of foam tape to the bigger part of the flower. And then let's see the height, maybe there. So it's kind of covered in leaves. And a little bit of glue just to keep it in place. And this one is going to be here. And then this one is here, covering the edge of the lace. So let's add the lace. Couple of pieces. And then I'm fraying the edge because I'm not too keen on this really cut look. I want it to be more like a frayed thing. Just happened to find its place in the page. This is actually something I brought home from our little summer trip because we went to a flea market and there was old lace and I was running out of old lace. So I actually got quite a good restash of those. Oops, sorry, now it's off focus. Please focus again. Yes, good. So that one is going to be there, and then this one is going to be here, but let's add the flower first in place. Just a little bit of craft glue for the lace. And again, kind of the same idea as with the, what are these leaves? So I'm not putting everything really securely. Again, it's just my style. I want things to be a little bit off the page, kind of a little bit dimensional. But naturally, if you want everything to be really tightly in place, then of course you use that. And now actually I forgot about something. It's not in my step-by-step thing. So let's do it this time, or then I need to cover a lot more. So I'm adding actually some black splashes to add a little bit of contrast to this page, partly to imitate kind of the contrast of the black and white photo and the details I'm adding, but just a teeny tiny touch to tie everything together in a way. Not wanting too much on the flower itself. On top of the leaf, it's okay. Maybe that. Yeah, let's go with that. Now this one is a little bit trickier. Which way, for example? Well, this way. But for this particular thing, I'm actually using a little bit more glue, or more spread, maybe, because this pumpkin is going from a page to the other. And then I need it to be more secured. So I can then cut it in half than usual, because usually I'm just adding a piece of tape underneath and I'm fine with it. But this time I need to be sure that this part and this part are adhered to the page, because when I'm cutting it, I don't want anything to fall totally off. Let's move that there to be drying. Well, actually I need a smaller piece, I think, for this man, and then again just fraying the edge. Okay, this would have covered the not so nice message as well. Now he's kind of sitting on a little doily. A little grandma quilt. Shall we put this then someplace? Maybe here. Or is it too much? Let's see. This is often how I work. I think Seth Apter actually uses a wonderful term. Introducing, I think it was called. No? It was something to do with theater. Like a tryout. If you know the term, please share it, because I can't now remember it, but it's auditioning. Yes, that was actually the term. Auditioning things. I think you can see it in my process videos as well, because there might be these quick transitions when I bring some kind of element to the project and then remove it, because it's just trying if it looks okay or then not. If it makes its way to the project, then it's okay, or if it's then gone, then I thought that it wasn't the thing for the current project. Okie dokie, still a little bit wet. I'm thinking now I'm using the heat tool, because these are blobs anyway, so I can heat these or dry these. Let's decide that those are dry enough. And then this one is going to be here. Let me again pull the sample one. As you can see, just a couple of more little things that are different. Little details, some embellishments. Let's first mount that tag in place. For that, I'm using again foam tape to get it a little bit more dimension. And that's kind of the, well, I like dimension, but that's also the problem for me, because then I require certain things from art journal and they get quite filled easily because of those dimensional layers. But still, I somehow like them to be in a book. So added a little twine detail before adhering the tag, because it's easier this way. I've done it a couple of million times, as well as when the tag is already in the project and it's doable, as you probably know. But if you can do it beforehand. Hello, Mary. Then it's easier. Come on, well, maybe a little bit down like so. Wanted a little bit more of that leaf showing and also kind of continuing with the book page there. Let's trim that off. Now that I saw that there's some trimming to do. Then that one, and also that one. So yes, this is Christmas stickers, but there's these things that go a year round. So now I had thought about something already that could go, but I can't now remember it. So let's see if I can quickly find something joyful. The sweetest story. Let's go with sweetest story this time. And let's use that one there for a couple of reasons. Like with the sample, the kind of title or story or whatever continues from this page to this page. And there's, well, a great contrast here. So that pulls the eye in, but also then I can hide the little bit awkward hand with that sticker. Yours, the sweetest story. Let's go with that. Now we need a Y. Or actually, let's go with S, going from backwards. So yours. Whoops. You can use also a ruler or any kind of piece of little plastic. Transparent is the best because then you can look through it when you're doing like this kind of a title, because when you have it on top of the transparent see-through ruler, then you can just find, or a little piece of plastic, then you can find the perfect spot for that. Yours. Right, yeah. Then where are the buttons? There are the buttons. Let's add them there. Why I chose black buttons? Well, I guess you can see it from here that this one kind of reflects the picture and there are some black splashes, but still I thought that it needed another element to tie everything together. So this, again, depending what kind of colors you are choosing to use, you might need even white buttons to bring a little bit more light to the project. But in this case, I thought that the black was the way to go. To add a little bit more of that contrast there. Kind of following the same thing that I have going in the sample, that two here and then one here, but does this look actually a little bit silly? Maybe a smaller one? I'm still wanting to put it here, but maybe underneath the lace a little bit. Yeah, let's go with that. Not that striking then. Because on top of the lace, it seems that it's a little bit too much in your face. Like so. Again, bringing the sample here. We are quite there. Like I said in the beginning, I'm adding these pages to my journal afterwards. So there's two things. Cutting these two loose so they are ready to be mounted. And also there's a teeny tiny detail, because when I looked at the page like it is now, I thought it needed a little bit more something, and that something was just a full stitch line done with the pencil again. So other option would have been black, to bring another black element to the page, but I was fearing that it was going to be too overpowering and kind of being the center of attention in a way, because this just needs to be a little visual detail, something to finish the project off. And it seems that I can't now draw a straight line. This is going all over the place, but never mind. But yeah, just kind of a little finishing thing and not the main focus. So that's why I again chose the pencil, and also partly using the same product as I already have listed in the materials. You could use a like an edge stamp as well, or even go to a sewing machine or use hand stitching, but just a little finishing thing. Then I'm hoping that the glue has dried, because then this is the last thing I do for a spread. Cut them loose, and then they are ready to be adhered to the journal, just with double-sided tape. So there we have it. If you have any questions, now is the perfect time, because otherwise I'm just then saying thank you really much for coming tonight, day, morning, depending where you are. It's night or evening here in Finland. So just a kind of a simple little art journal spread, but hopefully you got some ideas. Thank you, Lena. How to use maybe your stencils and watercolors in a new way, or then just a repetition of something you already know. There's like a gazillion different techniques and everything is done already, but still there might be a new way to an old technique somehow, or just a reminder, because there's the gazillion techniques, and at least I usually use the tried out ones, let's say. So I'm guessing there's not any questions, so let me just sign off. Again, thank you so much, and let me know if you have any preferences for the September live. Okay, now I'm off focus. Yeah, like in the comments, or just reach me in the any social media. So thanks again. Bye.